Hey guys, it's Casey and welcome back for our final video in this tower defense tutorial. This will be video number 13, and what we are going to do is we are going to set up some UI so that if we place a tower that we can click on this tower and it'll bring up a small window for us and we can see how much damage our tower does, we can see its XP, we can do some different things, and we'll set up upgrades. So what we're going to do is we want to go inside of our UI folder and let's make a new user widget, a widget blueprint, and we will call this selected tower widgets. And inside of this, I just want to make, let's do a vertical box. We'll make a slightly more complex widget here. We'll do a vertical box. Inside of this vertical box, we're just going to do like two, maybe just one horizontal box. Maybe we'll do that. We'll just have it be set to fill, so maybe we didn't need that vertical box, but let's see, we might need it here in a second. So what do we want? Let's view our tower's name, so we can say tower name, and let's make that a variable, and we'll call that name text, and that we will copy paste this over, and on this next box we will call this tower damage, and we will call this damage text. Let's see, what else do we want? We want experience, so let's make one more, and we will call it tower XP. Oops, and we will make this an XP text. And let's see, do we want anything else? And then what we want, I think the last thing that we'll make is we will make a button here on the end. So let's do that. Let's create a button, and inside of this button we will have it fill that space, and we will put some text inside of it, and we will call it upgrade tower. So this is not going to be very pretty, as you can see. So I ended up not wanting to use that vertical box, so if you wanted to, you could we could just move that to there, delete that oops, where's our horizontal? Oh, there it is. It's all the way up there. We delete that horizontal box. We didn't want it. So, and I'll just put this like somewhere near the bottom of our screen where we didn't have a widget before. So that looks good to me. If we wanted to, we could separate this a little bit. Like we could widen this. Let's see, if we wanted to widen this, and let's set everything to be fill to give it some space. It'll separate. Let's make that a little bit bigger just to fit everything. That looks fine to me. We're not really wanting or caring too much about being pretty. We just want this to pop up on the screen. And as always, we want to wrap our canvas in a size box, and then wrap the size box in a scale box. And inside of our our size box, we want to override the width and the height, and that works for me. So what we want to do now is we want to create this widget when we click on a tower. So where are we going to do that? We're obviously going to do that inside of our player pawn, because that's where we receive our inputs. So on left click, we already have some code written, but on left click, what we were checking to see is we were checking if we are having a build tower reference. So if we're building a tower and we have like that green highlight of our mesh, we want to not let our left click select a tower, we want to build. However, if we do not have a valid tower that we are building, let's check to see if there is a tower underneath our mouse. So what we can do is we can actually go over to our ghost tower. I'm going to close out of all this and reopen that because we had too much stuff opened up from the last video. I'm going to go over to our builder tower, and I'm actually just going to copy paste what we did here. Let's see. We're going to use this code, we're going to slightly change it, we're going to get what's under our mouse, and we are going to get the hit result, and we are going to check for a tower. I want to change this over to, I believe a pawn is what we made our towers, and if we check our tower BP, and we check our mesh, this should be a pawn, and it is, so that looks good to me. So what we want to do is we want to go here, and we want to do a branch to make sure we hit a pawn when we left click, and if we did hit a pawn when we left click, we want to cast that actor to tower BP, and if there is a pawn underneath our mouse and it is a tower, then we want to create our, what is it? We want to create a widget, that's right. We want to create a widget, and that widget is going to be our tower selection widget. We're going to add it to the viewport, but first we want to set some things inside of it. So inside of our selected tower, what we want to do is we need to open that widget back up because I closed it. Let's go to selected tower. What we want to do is we want to set its name text, we want to set its damage text, we want to set its XP, and we want to set an upgrade button. So interestingly, one thing that we can actually do is that I'm thinking about this. We could, at the spawn of that widget right here, we could set the values, right? We could tell it how much damage we're doing. We could tell it all that stuff. But I could actually see that our XP, if we selected the tower when it has 1 XP, and while we have it selected, say it kills another enemy and it goes up to 2 XP, that would not change unless we have our this text to be set to update all the time. How do we set our text to update all the time? We set a binding. So let's actually do that. But before we create a binding, what we're actually just going to feed this widget, let's just feed it a reference to our tower. So we're just going to feed it the selected tower. So let's create a variable, and we will just call it selected tower. We will make the variable type tower BP, and we're going to feed that, we're going to feed this widget in a second, this variable. But let's set up our bindings. So our tower name, let's create a binding. Let's rename the binding, and we'll name it name bind. This one technically we don't have to bind because the name should never change, but I'm not too worried about that. We're just, for your purposes, oops, we need to get our tower, what was it? What do we call that? Our tower struct. Technically, our name doesn't update, but for articulation purposes, we're just gonna write this anyways. But yeah, if we wanted to be performant, we could have it just at one time set the name text instead of a binding for it. But I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's just a very, 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 very minuscule amount of performance that we lose by not doing that. So if you're concerned about that, by all means, change that over. So this is going to be our damage, and we're going to call this our damage bind. And we are just going to take our damage, plug it in there. And the one thing I want to change is I don't want to show any decimal points. So when you convert a float over to a text, you get this toText node. And what I want to do is I want to change this maximum fractional digits to 0. I don't want any decimal points showing up there. If you have that set, potentially it could say 12.396. It's going to be sloppy. I'm not too concerned about showing decimal places, so I'm going to set that off. And then we also need to bind our XP. I'm going to copy paste our little bit over here, and we are going to get, okay, our XP is not inside of this. What I want to do is I want to get our XP. So off of our selected tower, we are going to get experience, and we are going to show that. And one thing I'm actually noticing, I'm remembering now, our damage, it's not set to, our damage is modified by experience. I remembered that now. So a solution to that could be, inside of our tower, what we can actually do if we wanted to, is instead of doing this math every time we shoot, we could actually store a new float for our damage. I'm not going to do that because normally within a game you set up like auras and stuff like that. And actually maybe we should fit that into this video. I've never actually thought about that. We're actually gonna, I'm just now thinking about it, we're actually gonna also set up like tower auras also. We'll do that later, but basically normally with tower defenses you have a lot of modifiers going into damage. With these modifiers, we need to be concerned about it constantly fluctuating. I don't really want to store a float to where we need to make sure we're constantly updating the stored variable float to what our damage is. So I'm actually just going to redo this damage calculation over inside of our widget to reflect our damage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get current level. This is our damage, right? Yep. So I'm going to get the current level, and we're going to multiply that all out, and we're going to take our damage, multiply it, and plug that back in. So now our damage properly reflects our experience inside of that widget. So we need to rename our XP widget and name it XP bind. That looks set up fine to me. So now what we should be able to do is we should be able to create that widget when we click on a tower. I know there's going to be a few checks I want to do, or actually in the widget we need to feed it what the player reference was, or what the tower was. We called that what? Inside of our widget we called it selected tower. So let's do set selected. Why am I not seeing that? Tower selected. Oh, this is the wrong widget. Selected tower widget. Tower select. Why do we have two of these? What is this? Oh, okay. That is actually really bad by me. I did not realize that I made two widgets named that close to each other. And a selected tower widget is our new one. So let's rename our tower selection widget, and let's name that our tower building widget. That's actually really bad naming by me. You almost never want to do that. Like, never should you get confused between which widgets you're creating or anything like that. That is a very bad job by me. Like, that is honestly really bad. So with that tower building widget renamed, it's much obvious now, much more obvious. So let's grab our selected tower widget, and now we can set our selected tower. And from our tower, we need to actually feed this reference right here, this cast, and that looks good to me. I believe we are good there. And there's one thing I know, is that I want to make it so that when we click, say we click on a tower and we have it selected, if I click off of that tower in an open space, what I want to do is I want to deselect and I want to destroy that widget. So if we hit this is not valid, what I want to do here is I want to do off of this false, so if we do not hit a tower, I want to actually check to see if we have one of these selected tower widgets currently created. So I'm going to promote it to a variable, and I'm going to call this selected tower reference. And so when we click on a tower and we create the widget, we're going to store its variable. And what I want to do is I want to check to see if this is valid. So if we do not hit a tower and we have a valid widget, I want to destroy this actor, or I want to remove from parent, sorry. When you remove widgets, that destroys them. So we want to remove from parent if that is valid, and then we want to set that reference back to be blank. So that looks good to me. And I know one more thing I want to do. Let's say we had the one tower selected. Say we had 2 towers selected in the world. If we have our left tower selected and we had this widget opened, if I then clicked on our tower on the right side, I know that I want to delete that widget that we had for the left tower and I want to open up the right tower. So when we click on a tower and we have a hit actor for a tower, what I want to do is I want to see if this reference is, let's say is valid. Let's do another is valid. If we currently have a widget open, what we are going to do is we are going to check, is this reference that we currently have stored, is its selected tower that we're storing inside of it, is that tower the same tower that we just clicked on? And we're going to do branch. And if we do not have a widget when we click on a tower, we're just going to go ahead and create the widget. But if we do have a widget when we click on a tower, we're going to check, is it the same tower that we currently have open in our widget? If it is the same tower, we don't want to do anything. We don't want to destroy our current widget. We don't want to make another one. We don't want to do anything. However, if the widgets are different, what we want to do is we want to take this this reference and we want to remove from parent. And then what we want to do is we just want to go on our normal course afterwards of creating a new widget. I'm not concerned about setting that widget reference to be false afterwards, because I know right afterwards we're going to overwrite it with a new widget reference. So that's just a little bit of normal logic that you would probably do over the course of a game, of just checking to see when things currently exist, when they don't exist, and just figuring out how to delete them or override them when you need to. So hopefully this works. What we can do is we can take our bush tower, we can spawn it in the world, and if I click on it, you can see it creates the tower bush. We have 10 damage, 0 experience, and what we can do is we can spawn our waves, and actually I want to create a second tower, and let's see here. Or let's click. So I can swap between our towers. You can see how I can seamlessly swap between the towers. I can click off of them to destroy them. Now if I click on this tower, I can see it has 10 experience. Cool. So let's set up our upgrade button. I want to make the upgrade code fairly simple. I don't want to go too complex in it because this is really up to your game, once again, whether you want towers to upgrade, how you want them to upgrade. But basically, when we upgrade a tower, we essentially want to just reset that tower's values. So inside of our tower data table, I want to create a new tower, and I'm going to call this, let's say, Bush 2. And I know internally, for my reasons, or let's call it Bush. We'll call it like Bush Medium. Basically, we just want to know what the name of that bush is, and we will call this next one Bush Medium. And let's just make these values for this Bush Medium to be slightly higher. We will make this do 20 damage with a range of like 600, with a fire rate of, let's say, like 0.8. Let's make it fire slightly faster. And what we want its cost to be is going to be, let's say the upgrade cost is 100, and let's say should not rotate. Let's make this have the same mesh. I'm not going to worry about setting up this stuff. That's all for visual purposes. We're not concerned about that, or at least I'm not, for showing how to upgrade. And now what we can do is let's actually go inside of our struct and let's make 2 variables. Let's say can upgrade, and we'll make this a boolean. So we will say whether or not a tower can upgrade, and that will also make one more, and we will say the upgrade to tower. And we will make this one, we will make it a name reference, and what we want to do is this will be the tower that we're upgrading to. So inside of our data table, what we can now do for our bush is we can say can upgrade, and the tower that we want to upgrade to is going to be called bush medium. So now what we can do is that when we get our tower and we have its data stored, we know that we can upgrade it, and we know the tower that we're going to upgrade to is going to be this bush medium tower. So what we can do is inside of our widget, we can, on that button press, what we're going to do is we were going to check to make sure that we can upgrade. So I'm actually going to rename that button, and I'm going to call it upgrade button. And on click of that button, we are going to get our selected tower, and from our selected tower, we're going to get its data. And out of its data, what we want to get is we want to make sure that it can upgrade. So I'm going to do a branch here. And if we can upgrade, what we are going to do is we are going to make a custom event inside of our tower, and we are going to call it upgrade. So add custom event, and we are going to call this upgrade events. So what we want to do is we want to almost mimic that code just in case we need to call this somewhere else. We just want to double check that we can upgrade. And if we can upgrade, what we want to do is we want to get a new data table row of the tower that we're upgrading to. So get data table row. What row name do we want from our tower table? Well, we want the tower that we're upgrading to. And then with this, what we want to do is, I believe what we can just do is we can set the struct of our tower. We can remake, or we can override this data here to be our new tower. And I believe what we might just be able to do is we can recall the tower initialize. And what that's going to do is that's going to reset our static mesh. It's going to reset our range. And since we're grabbing things like our damage and our fire rate out of this struct, I believe everything should just auto update to our new tower. Say we wanted our tower to have a different sound, a different particle, that will automatically update too, because if you remember, we're getting that also straight from our struct. That's fairly convenient. So I think I like that. I think I'm happy with that. I don't think we will run into any issues with that. So let's do this here. Let's grab our tower. Let's put it in the world. We can select it, and we can say it's a bush that does 10 damage. If I hit upgrade, let's see what happens. Oh, I didn't call the event. Whoopsie, I made a small mistake. Back inside of our widget on that upgrade button with our tower reference, we just need to call that upgrade event now, and we should be happy. So let's try that now. Let's do that one more time. Let's create a bush. We can select our bush, and if we hit upgrade, you can see it turned into bush medium. Its radius updated to be slightly longer. Its damage is now 20, and if I hit the upgrade tower, nothing is going to happen because our bush, our second level of that bush, its can upgrade is set to false, so nothing will happen when we hit that upgrade button. So that handles upgrades. We're only 17 minutes in. I want to set up, let's see here. I want to at least articulate. Maybe I don't want to fully set up auras, but I at least want to articulate auras to you guys. So if we were going to do an aura, so an aura is basically, we can say, like in a 200 radius around our tower, like say we built a bush tower next to a bush tower, maybe we want this tower to say to this other tower, hey, do something. We want you to do more damage. Maybe we want to slow enemies. Let's actually do that. Let's set up an aura to slow enemies. That can be fairly simple. So what I would probably do is, I might make this more complex. It depends on exactly how we want to do this. If I had a game and I knew beforehand I wanted to have a bunch of different auras, I wanted a bunch of different on-kill effects, I wanted a bunch of complexity, I would probably have to sit down and think about how I want to structure all of that code, because it would be really easy if you wanted to add 1,000 different types of things to your games, like 1,000 different type of tower functionalities, that this list of variables is going to be massively long, probably not very smart. So if you were going to add a lot of functionality, I would really sit down and think about how you can condense this into a smaller form. But for me, let's make a variable, and we will call this a slow aura. We will make that a boolean, and we will make one more, and we will call this the slow effect, and we will make this a float. So now we are going to go into our data table, and let's make our bush. Let's make our bush have a slow aura, and let's have it slow the enemies, let's say by 300. So maybe it's actually better to do a percentage. Let's make our slow effect count as a percentage. So let's make our slow be by 0.5. So let's slow our enemies by 50%. If we wanted to, we could also set up another variable, and we could make this like the slow radius, and we could set up how we want to slow in a radius. Let's just make it be the same radius as our shooting radius. I'm happy with that. Actually, no, that might be a cop-out. Let's actually set up a new radius. I actually feel kind of bad if we don't make a new radius. Let's call it the slow radius. But do you see what happens? That just to add a slow aura, that we start adding a bunch of variables. If you wanted a damage aura, you'd probably start adding a bunch of variables. So it would be very good, and there is a creative way. There has to be a creative way for you to knock down your variables to a smaller amount. I can probably think of one, but it would probably take me 30 minutes to an hour to explain it. I don't really feel like it's that important. If you're making something that complex, I really encourage you to try and invent that system yourself. I really, really, really encourage that. So on our bush tower, we're going to have a slow aura. We're going to have it slow our enemies by 50%, and let's put it in the radius of, let's say, 400. So what we want to do is, inside of our tower BP, what we want to do is, let's see if we can create a new component. Let's see, can we do that? Can we create a component? Let's see, how can we do that? Let's see, if we wanted to, I don't know if I would want to do that. Let's see, can we disable an overlap component? We can't do that. Can we do set enabled? Set collision enabled? I guess we could do that. So let's do that. Let's add another component, and we will make this a sphere. There probably is a better way of doing that. We're going to call this sphere our slow aura. And I'm trying to think. Can we dynamically create an overlap? I'm trying to think. In the construction script, I don't think you can do that. Create component creates... What is this called again? It's create a sphere. Create sphere collision. So no, that's a dynamic material instance. Spawn sphere. I don't think there's a way to dynamically create a sphere collision. Let's just check one more. If I search the word collision, is there anything about creating? We can set, we can sphere overlap. Let's see, what does that say? Returns and actors, no. No, get capsule, no, I'm not seeing anything. So I don't think, oh, there it is. Actually, here we go. Add sphere collision. I did not see that before. So let's actually delete the slow aura, and let's do it more dynamically. We can add a sphere collision. Perfect. I did not know this existed. Awesome. Learn something new every day. So on the tower initialize, when we initialize our tower, let's, is that a good place to do it? I could see an issue doing it here. I think I'm okay with that though. Let's at least do it for now, and we'll see if we run into that issue later. We want to make the transform of our actor. So let's get our actor transform. Is that local? The relative transform between the new component and its parent. Let's do make. We just want that all to be 0. That's a little confusing because it wants a relative transform. I think we just want to feed it 0. That's a little weird to me that it's doing that. And what I want to do is I want to set the radius of this. Actually, we want a branch. I apologize, I'm jumping the gun. We want to make a branch, and we want to check to be like, hey, do we want to make a slow this is going to be our slow sphere, right? We want to check like, hey, should we create one? If we want to create one, we will create it, and we will set its radius to be the radius of our aura. And now what we want to do is we want to get its overlaps. How can we get the overlaps from this? Let's see. Overlap? That's a little weird. That's actually kind of funny. I'm not sure how you would get a sign on overlap. Is that how you do this? I think that's how you do this, actually. I've never really used this before. I've never actually, believe it or not, I've never dynamically created something. I think this is how you do it. I think what this does is this binding. So what I did there is off the reference from this, I typed in overlap, and what we have here is we have this bindings. I believe what this does is, since like with a normal overlap sphere, we can go down and we can get its overlap event. But because we're dynamically creating this sphere, we may or may not have this sphere. We can't just simply grab its event. I believe what this binding will do is what we're saying is that if we run this code, it's saying, hey, we want to bind this event and this event together so that now we have an overlap event that might have not actually existed. This overlap might never exist. This actually overlap will not exist if we aren't creating a slow aura. So I believe this will work. That's actually pretty cool. I've never really used that before, but I know it's of its existence. But that's nice. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, or actually, nope, we're going to say, hey, other actor, we are going to cast you to our runner. And we're going to say, hey, if our runner enters our sphere, what we want to do is we want to set its max walk speed. We want to get its character movement component. We want character movements component, and we want to set its max walk speed. And what we want to do is, let's see here. So something interesting. Let's see. God, I feel really dirty doing it that way. So what I'm actually going to do is I can see an issue. What we're going to do is we're going to set down the walk speed of our runner. When our runner leaves our overlap and we need to set back up the run speed of our runner, I could see an issue being existent. And I feel really dirty thinking about that. So what we're going to do is we need to go inside of our runner. And what we want to do is we want to store its run speed. And we want to make that a float. And what I want to do is that when we spawn this runner, I want to grab that run speed, or I want to set that run speed. So let's go into our spawner. We need to set the run speed. So the more I work with new variables inside of this runner, the more I kind of regret not just using not using this structure and just storing it inside of it. The more I make it, the more I kind of regret it. So in your game, you very may well want to get rid of like all these variables and just store inside of it the run speed. There is honestly the more variables I add, the more I kind of believe in doing that. So that's kind of something I regret a little bit, but that's okay. So inside of our tower, on the overlap, what we want to do is we want to get the run speed, and what we want to do is we want to multiply it by our slow amount, which comes from our tower struct data. And what we want to do is we want to multiply it by that slow effect, which we had set to 0.5, and that's going to set its run speed down. And I want to do one more thing, is off of our sphere collision, we now need an end overlap. So on assign on end overlap, this will assign a new event for us. And on the end of the overlap, I want to move this slightly to the side. What we want to do is we want to cast to runner, other actor, cast to AI runner. And what we want to do is we want to set its run speed. If we get the run speed of that actor, we want to grab its movement component again, and we want to set its max walk speed to be back equal to that run speed. So let's try that out. I believe this code should be good to go. A little sloppy. I'm not quite happy how this code turned out. I think it's going to work just fine. But I'm having some issues in my head with how we're setting down the run speed of our enemies. I could foresee if we start adding a good bit more complexity to our runners that we would need a more robust system for setting down and setting back up its run speed. I can foresee that, but I think this simple system, I think it will work just fine for us. If you start adding more complexity, I think you might need to add some more logic to that system. So when we start our wave, we could, yep, do you see how they start fast, but then they go slow? And that, let's see if one of these runners escapes. Yep, there we go. And then you can see when he leaves that slow radius, he starts running fast again. So that's how you set up auras. You can add a sphere. You can add in a collision sphere. You can set its radius to be equal to that amount. And then what you really want to do is on overlap of that sphere, we just want to check, hey, what's inside of it? If we wanted to increase the damage of the towers around us, we could do a cast to other actors. We could get a reference to the towers that are around us, and we could store, instead of storing like a slow effect, we could store like a damage amp effect, and so on and so forth. So I believe, was this our last video? I believe this is it. So I think that does it for our tower defense tutorial. If I get some comments later of people really asking for something that I might have overlooked or forgotten, we can go back and add it. But I really think this is the basis of a tower defense. Of course, more functionality will probably be needed for you, but I hope I articulated well how we can use our data tables and how we can set up our different effects. So yeah, I like it. I think we did pretty good here. I apologize. This was my first tutorial, my first full-length tutorial that I've done on YouTube. So if there's some things that I did that you did like, or some things that I did that you didn't like, please let me know. If I need to speed up or slow down, if like whatever it may be, please let me know. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and most of all, I really hope you learned. I hope this wasn't a tutorial that you merely just copied me. I feel like in the latter videos, I started working a bit faster and I stopped explaining my logic as much, but I feel like it's because we started repeating processes. It was a lot of going back into our data table, making a new variable, and just doing the same process over and over. But in those early videos, I really tried to explain my thinking. I really tried to explain why we created new actors. I guess some tips that I would have, if I were to make this a full-fledged game, my personal workflow is that I like working in blueprints. It's something I enjoy, but I do know that blueprints are not the most performant. I forget what the numbers are, but I believe C++ is about 10 times faster than blueprints. So what I would probably do before I turn this into a final game is I would identify which parts of my code were the least performant. Most of the time, it's going to be whatever is on tick. So maybe what I would do is I would grab, sorry, I burped. I would grab like these functions like check for new target, maybe this function of set our actor's rotation. I would probably move this type of code and I would move it over into C++, and that I would leave the rest of the code here. And that in C++, I would do the complex calculations that are often happening on tick, and I would do the math over in C++, and that I would make it a C++ function callable in blueprints. That's probably what I would end up doing. There's some things that I might change over for a final game, but most of the time, what we did here, this is kind of final game code. It's at least getting there. Usually what you do is you add more functionality, and then what I would do is I would come back later and kind of look at what was not performant, move it over to C++, but really that's about it. It's a lot of, from here, it's a lot of polishing, it's a lot of balancing, it's a lot of adding your new features, and a lot of it is going to be a lot of UI work. Personally, the stuff that I don't enjoy is making fancy buttons, fancy overlays, making it look pretty, having it animate in and out. You can play audio within your widget, so when the player clicks the upgrade button, if we wanted to, we could do something like play sound, and we could play a sound on our game. So there's really just a lot of stuff left to do, but I feel like a lot of it is just your normal game polish. But I really do hope you guys learned something. I really hope if you are making a tower defense and this wasn't just a learning experience for you, I hope the code that we went through, I hope it serves you well, and I hope that you are able to use it all the way to a finished product. So thank you guys. I really thank those of you that stuck around and watched everything. I really hope you learned something. And if you want to see more tutorials, if there's a specific topic that you would like me to talk about, a specific type of game, please let me know. I really enjoy doing this. I think I made these tutorials over the course of 3 days, and for me, I would do work on my own games, and I know I'd stop, spend 20-30 minutes, make a video, and just go right back to working. So I enjoyed this. So if there's anything you want me to touch on, please let me know, and I'd be happy to do it. So this was Casey, and this was the tower defense tutorial.